Hello, good evening. I'd like to welcome you once more to TV Bakwetu. My name is Elias Munsha, and today at about 21:30 Chuempala time, I am joined by one of my very good friends, Lawrence Musunte, and we continue our conversation that we started yesterday. The conversation with Lawrence is about his own story, but not just about his own story, but also the story of faith, religion, and the church, and how all these interact with each other. And so I'm going to let you share this link with as many people as possible. We had a segment previously, and so we transitioned into a new segment here where we are talking with Brother Lawrence. I know that he was in the studio just now. He went out due to one reason or so, and so we are going to see what time he comes back. All right. And the reason why we are having this conversation with Lawrence Musunte is because of the significance of religion in Zambia. And not only in Zambian public life, but also in Zambian political life. Religion is very, very important. And so we are exploring those themes of religion. So we are exploring those themes so that we see how religion impacts on public life, on culture, and there is no better way to look at this than to look at how one of our citizens, how they progressed in their own faith journey, and how they then integrate that together. And the reason why we do this is because my own life as well is this ambiguity, brings up this ambiguity between faith and public life. In this case, I'm a Pentecostal preacher, but I'm also a political agitator, if you care to say that, and a lawyer and everything else. So how do we then integrate all this? How do we make sense of all these identities, so to speak? And that's why to have somebody like Pastor Lawrence Musunte help us understand through his own personal journey, so that we can see how this could help our country. And we are doing this because we are also reminded of several other young men and young women who are rising up in religion, growing up in religion, growing up in particularly one religion of interest to us is the born-again Pentecostal movement. How does that work? How can we help? How can we help the faith? How can we keep the faith? How can we help the Pentecostal faith keep the faith? But not just about the Pentecostal faith keeping the faith, but actually the Pentecostal faith continuing in both faith and practice. How do we integrate these two very important issues? And that's why we have this discussion. And that's why we have to draw from the life experiences of someone. So before I'm joined by Lawrence Musunte, we have our resident pharmacist. And so how is your own faith journey, our pharmacist?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Kansomisha. First, I'm a Christian. I congregate with the Pentecostals.
Right.
Though sometimes I go to Reformed Church, even you see it. So in terms of my Christian life, first of all, I follow the life of Jesus and how Jesus suffered for the people and for everyone, including myself, and how
Right.
he sacrificed his life and how he had to put more of integrity in everything he was doing, and how he was selfless in such a way that he lived for other people than for himself.
Right.
And sometimes he was learning whenever he had some problems, whatever he had some challenges, he would go back to his father in heaven and ask for him to be strengthened. So those are some of the principles that I usually follow. And my other verse that I like probably in the Bible, it's the book of Joshua,
Right.
especially Joshua chapter 1, starting from 6 there up to 13, somewhere there, 14. I
Right.
like that because at least it encourages me on how I should carry on my day-to-day life. Yeah.
Right. Indeed, and that's just not unusual, right? We have so many people that are trying to negotiate and embrace this faith. They are Christians on the other hand, and they are in public life. Now, when you started to become a pharmacist, did religion at all play any role for you?
Yeah, yes, for me, actually, it played a very, very big role when I think I turned up to be born again. I think when I was in grade 11, going into grade 12, and before getting into the university, my pastor would pray with me and ask for guidance from God. And that's where I was even taught to say, if I go in the issues of studying science kind of studies, would do me very, very good. So it started from there. I didn't know at first. I didn't want to be a pharmacist because I didn't know what pharmacy was all about.
Right.
But I found myself being a pharmacist, and I'm seeing how God is using me to help most of the Zambian people know a lot of things concerning the issues of pharmacy, and also motivating the young people to become one day pharmacists. So that's when I say, oh, I'm in the right path and doing the correct thing. And this was seen before by my pastor when I was just in grade 12, somewhere there.
Right. Frank.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, you don't seem to be ready. We'll get back to you soon. Hey, Bet, how do you integrate faith in the marketplace?
Pardon?
Faith, your Christian religion, and what you do for living. How do you integrate them?
How do I view faith and religion?
Yes.
Okay. Faith is what governs us, and religion is something that has been brought about. Okay, there's so much lagunas around religion because it's brought a lot of confusion to humanity. But let's talk about faith. I believe in faith so much. Faith is what drives me.
Right.
I believe in God the Father, Jesus the Son, and in the Holy Spirit.
Right.
I've grown up. I grew up in a household where we were given the freedoms and the rights to worship. My father, my biological dad, is SDA. My mother used to be Catholic.
All right. I think we are having definite issues with Herbert Bilika. Now, Frank, how do you integrate your Christian faith into what you do?
I think for me, it's in everything that I do. So I'm a priest in the New Apostolic Church, and also I work as a human resource advisor for the National Health Service. I think for me,
how does it work in the New Apostolic Church? So do you just become a priest? How does the whole thing work?
So in the New Apostolic Church, our ministers, we don't go to study. We don't go to Bible college. So all the ministers are just drawn from the lay. They're just drawn from the lay. So essentially, we're lay ministers.
All right.
So essentially, we're lay ministers. So we have a day job. Then we go and do all the church stuff after work. That's how it's always worked.
The New Apostolic Church is one of the biggest churches in Zambia. You know that, right?
Yes.
But they are not as politically outspoken. Is there any reason why that is?
It is. It's a stance that the church have taken. I think over the years they've kind of just realized that in order to function in whatever country that they're in, they have to be politically neutral. Which at the moment there's a debate about that, where the church should speak up. It's a conversation I was having with the youth, where as young people we're reaching a point that says, as a church, we just cannot continue not speaking out. We just can't continue ignoring things going on around. So it was a stance I was taken many years ago to say we're going to remain politically neutral. But now it's the same stance that's being questioned now that says, but how can you as a church just not say anything?
Right.
So this is where it comes in everything that we do, because you can't ignore injustice. You can't ignore when you see something wrong happening. You can't say, well, I'm neutral, I'm not going to say anything. I believe as a church, we have to have a voice that says, we don't agree with that. And being able to have that stance that says, it is wrong for the people. Because in keeping silent, we are ignoring what our members are going through. And as a church, and every church should never ignore what its members are going through.
All right. So then, are you then trying to suggest that there is a move to steer the New Apostolic Church from a more apolitical view to a more politically inclined position?
There's more of a view to start speaking up when we see something. I wouldn't say a political position, but more a review of not going, we're going to say silent, but more of a view is we're going to say something when we see it happening.
Is that the church in where you are in Britain, or that's the church in Zambia?
That is more of the church where we are in Britain right now.
All right. Okay. I know we probably do not have other New Apostolic Church members, particularly in Zambia, that can tell us of what is happening. But the New Apostolic Church is indeed one of the largest denominations in Zambia, and so it and the Seventh-day Adventists. The Seventh-day Adventist has also been less political. It's been quite apolitical. It's only just recent that the SDA Church is actually taking political positions, but they haven't been doing that. Our denomination, on the other hand, we Pentes are extremely outspoken, even when we are fewer, right? Even when we are fewer. So thank you about that. So I'm going to bring Brother Lawrence. Thank you for joining us. So there was an issue with the connection, right?
Yeah, it wasn't a big issue. I just didn't know where to place that enter. So my daughter has just helped me now. You know, we are all mutual.
All right. So right here, we have Jerome, who is a pharmacist and is a regular contributor to our program, but is a Pente, like you and me.
Okay.
And then we have Frank Saliki, who is also a priest. He says that he's a priest, or the priest equivalent in the New Apostolic Church.
Okay, yes, I understand.
And then we've also got Herbert, except that we can't have so many on the screen, but Herbert is following in the background. And I think he's also a Pente. And, and some, so the view that we take here is that we speak to Zambians. We are not preaching to Zambians. My programs, my own, even my own Facebook, I do get accused by some of our friends to say, why aren't you using it to preach? And I'm like, when I put up a status regarding culture, regarding politics, that is preaching.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but we have an audience that is Christian, non-Christian, atheist, and that is the audience that we are supposed to relate to, politically or otherwise.
Exactly.
That's why, Pastor Lawrence, when the issue of butane came up, and people from my faith said that we've got to turn Zambia into a Pentecostal nation, we pushed back and said no. Zambia must continue to remain a nation that God created.
Yes.
This idea of saying that Zambia must become a Pentecostal country, no. If you Pentes want to go and preach to convert the entire country into Pentecostalism, please do so, but do not use the state.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
So now, Pastor Lawrence, I hope you will excuse me when I slip up and say Pastor Lawrence.
No problem.
All right?
No problem. I understand.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to bring back so everyone is in the background. They are following the discussion, and then I'll bring them back at a later stage.
Yes.
So yesterday we started the story of your own ambiguity.
Yes.
Right? Your parents came from Luapula, settled in Katanga.
Yes.
And had several children, and so they became Congolese.
Yes.
You were born in Lubumbashi, and then one of your relatives, I think one of your aunties or your sisters, they brought you into Zambia. And so you reclaimed your Zambian citizenship, and then you say that you feel like you've not belonged. And when that day comes, when you die, you say that you want to be cremated and your ashes to be sprayed on the no man's land between Congo and Zambia. But you also mentioned how you are growing up in Chidilabombwe, and then you become born again, and you were still going to the Catholic Church, and you were a very zealous born-again brother who confronted Father Jose from the Chidilabombwe Catholic Church. And that was in the 90s when we born-agains really felt like it was destiny for us to rule.
Definitely.
And so you then became part of the Word of Life Church. And so that's where you ended your story. I would like to have you continue at the Word of Life.
Yes. So being in secondary school, so things are not certain. When I came to grade 12 and we finished our exams, I decided to leave because by that time, the sister that brought me into Zambia is now in Lusaka. And I went to join her up there in Lusaka, and I was very, very new. So the first person that I met was going to Christ Church. I don't know what they call it, non-instrumental. It's Christ Church non-instrumental in Matero. So this brother said, come to church with us. And I went to the church and I came back and eventually discovered that I'm a Christian. And we connected. And he had a fiancée who was going to Grace Ministries in Lilanda. So we were staying in Lilanda. And the fiancée said one Sunday, this coming Sunday, Lawrence is coming with me to Grace Ministries. So that is how she took me to Grace Ministries. At that time, they were at a school, and there was a Pastor Ruben Samble, the man that I found there, and his wife, Chimuta. And yeah, so they were in a classroom.
So that we just put everything in perspective. Pastor Ruben Sambo is actually vice president of the MMD.
Yes, that is the man.
And is a running mate to Dr. Nevas Mumba in the upcoming elections.
Yes. So that is my pastor. Yeah. And when I went to Grace Ministries in Lilanda, I think it was just after the breakaway from the UCZ.
Right.
So I'm coming from a complete different background. Obviously, from Chiraombo, we've already picked up the UCZ young people revival meetings and stuff like that. So we interacted from Chiraombo. But in Lusaka, that's when I joined Grace Ministries itself under Lilanda. And when we finished the service, some brothers came to greet me, and one of the brothers says, I come with you to your home. I want to find out where you stayed. So that is how he connected me and started to bring me into Grace Ministries. It took about a month or two. Two brothers came to summon me and say, but Deacon was saying about a fire. And I'm like, I'm new. Good to vow for Charlie. What have I done? Right. And I went there, and the big man said to me, look, I've spoken to these your friends that you can start up a youth ministry here in church, but they are all, dilly-dallying, and so your name came up. Right. So that's why you are here. So we started with those guys at Grace Ministries Youth Ministry, and I think at that time that I had great impact at Grace Ministries and the youth ministry. But I was also blessed greatly because Ruben Sambo is one of the best teachers of the Word of God.
All right.
And I connected to him, and I just began to take in everything from him until at a time when I was going to Bible college. Then I went to Victory Institute of Biblical Studies. Initially, I wanted to be like my pastor, Ruben Sambo, because he went to Kaniki Bible College. So I wanted to go to Kaniki Bible College. So I arrived for interviews at Kaniki Bible College, and I'm ushered into this interview room, and they asked me, what's your name? Where are you from? Who is your pastor? When I said Ruben Sambo, they all stood up like, how is he doing? Tell us, does he teach you anything about deliverance and things like that? So deliverance is very strong with the guys from Kaniki Bible College.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so they had some kind of history with my pastor. And that kind of history with my pastor, they wanted to find out exactly what does he teach about when he teaches this and this and that and that. So at that point...
So was it, what was the history? Was it that he was into deliverance, or he wasn't into deliverance?
He was into deliverance. But one of the stories that I've heard from Pastor Sambo himself many years ago is that they were in a class, and this lecturer came in and he said, he has seen a demon. He has seen a demon. It is black. And Pastor Ruben Sambo then also stood up and said, sir, I've also seen a demon. It is white. And I think, I don't know if that was a board of contention between those two, the lecturer and the student, so the white lecturer and the black student. But it was, he is gifted. He's a very gifted guy. So when I was denied at Kaniki, they couldn't accept me. And because there were no places and blah, 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 I already had a second plan. So I'd already applied to Victory Institute of Biblical Studies. And they called me at Victory Bible College. And I went. My wife, then my fiancée, also was going to a Bible school. They call it GLOW, Gospel Literature Outreach. It's just their neighbors with Kaniki. And yeah, so both of us were in Bible college. I was in Kitwe Victory Institute of Biblical Studies, and Irene was in Ndola. Now, you must understand that I don't know Dr. Nevas Mumba. I'm going to Victory Institute of Biblical Studies, knowing the man from the television.
Okay.
I arrived at Victory, they received me and stuff like that. And we were told Dr. Nevas is preaching in America. And he was scheduled to speak to us to come and lecture on Friday. So Thursday night, we had news that the dog has arrived and, you know, they are bringing him down to the Copper Belt. In my mind, then, I'm thinking from America, he was tired and he's coming to Lusaka, then from Lusaka, travel all the way to Kitwe. This man is so tired. That is in my mind. I'm like, I don't think you pitch up tomorrow for class.
Right.
And so Friday, I'm in class. I like to be in front because I'm short in stature. And so I'm sitting there.
In other words, Mudibe.
Yes, I've got the presentation. Yeah. And so I'm seated there, and all of a sudden I hear the sound I hear on television. Hallelujah! And I tamed, this is Dr. Nevas Mumba in flesh and blood. I mean, that moment to this time, I still feel something stand. You know, you feel euphoria because this man you watch on TV is in your class.
Right.
He's talking to you. Is touching you. And yeah, and it was so powerful. But I didn't belong. I never went to Victory Bible Church. Bachme Sakunda by then was the overseer for Grace Ministries. He said to me, Pachu Impala, I think is it Chuempala? Where is Chimwemwe and Chuempala?
Chuempala is in Chingola.
Yeah, it's
that's
Chimwemwe.
I was born in Chuempala, and that's where I grew up, in Chuempala.
So Chimwemwe Grace Ministries, GMMM, Chimwemwe Grace Ministries had no pastor there.
Right.
So Overseer told me, why don't you go there on the weekends? You know, because they don't have a pastor. So I started going there every Friday to pray. I never had an opportunity to go to Victory Bible College. But between the lectures, the lecturers, and Nevas Mumba, Chibesakunda, Ruben Sambo played a very important role in terms of grooming me as a preacher.
Right.
He wasn't very generous with his pulpit. Then, I don't know now, he wasn't generous with his pulpit.
So when you said the word generous with the pulpit, what you are actually saying is that he wouldn't allow others to preach for him.
He really needed to know a person well enough to stand up there and preach.
Okay.
So
right.
It's more on the cautious side than just, you know, yeah. And the first time I went back, you know, for holiday, he gave me the pulpit. And he asked me to speak to the leaders during the week. And every time I went to Lusaka, he opened that pulpit. Sometimes he'll say, I'm not going to be there on Sunday. You take this service and I'm going. And it is that trust. But also because he had lifted the bar so high in terms of teaching and preaching. And I really loved his ministry. I still love his ministry. And I believe that apart from the people in Chidabomwe who really helped me grow in the faith,
right?
Ruben Sambo did a great work in my life as a youth, transitioning and settling in Grace Ministries.
Right.
Yeah. So from there, when I finished school, I went to Chilanga. We started Chilanga Mission Center of Grace Ministries, and we stayed there for about 2 years, and then we left. And there is a season when we wanted to do church in Lilanda. It didn't work really, and I felt at that time that I needed to leave. Now, in hindsight, the time that I'm contemplating to leave Zambia, it is at a time when Dr. Neves has, come out into politics. And it is also at the time when Frederick Chiluba is vying for a third term.
Okay. Yeah.
And I could feel at that point, because I thought that, Chiluba, as a Democrat, he was going to do things better than pushing for a third term.
Right.
And at that time, I felt like getting into politics. And if I got into politics at that time, I was going to be supporting Dr. Neves Mumba.
All right.
Because I still think now, though years have passed, I think that Dr. Neves Mumba was not just the ordinary preacher. I think in terms of leadership, he was well-traveled, he was well-connected, and just the way he carried himself. But also at that time when pastors will only concentrate on preaching ministry and pastoral ministry, and Dr. Neves Mumba did a lot of things. So he had a television program, he was at a crusade, he had international conferences, he was an itinerary preacher, he was traveling, he was a lecturer, he was doing all these things. And so in my mind and in my thought, I'm so convinced that if we are looking for leadership in the nation, Dr. Neves Mumba was that man that was going to provide.
So that was about 99, 2000, 2001.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I left Zambia in 2001.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was just around that time. But Dr. Neves never got the opportunity to get the numbers right. And this is why the failure of Dr. Neves Mumba was based on a narrative that was not scriptural.
Okay, I want you to say that again. So
I'm saying the failure of Dr. Neves Mumba was based on a narrative that was perpetuated by Chiluba himself using Vasata, and that narrative was not theologically sound.
All right, and what was that narrative?
The first thing that they did, they wanted to portray Dr. Neves, because this is a darling of the nation. Right. Neves, even the little child, when he sees Neves to say, Jesus, 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 that is Neves. Neves, that is why we don't even call about Neves. We just call Neves. That is a household brand. He was powerful. He was well known. The nation knew who Neves Mumba was.
Right.
And I think the strategy for Chiluba and Sata then was to make sure that they turn the Christians against Dr. Neves Mumba.
Right. I see you are mentioning Chiluba and Sata, but you are leaving out Mianda. Any reason why Mianda is not in the picture?
At that time, I don't think that Mianda is still. Is he still in MMD or he has left? Because
no, he's still in MMD. He's Minister of Education.
Okay, so I didn't pay so much attention about Brigadier General Mianda in terms of his political life, but I also know that Mianda is a Christian.
Right.
And so they portrayed Dr. Neves as someone that is lost. He has left the pulpit. He has left the church. Right. He is no longer preaching. He is into politics. Now, all that was wrong because Dr. Neves Mumba never at any time left preaching. He didn't leave the pulpit.
So now help us here. So there is this understanding that you can't do both, right? You can't be a preacher and politics at the same time.
Yes. So that is what I talked about yesterday between the secular and the sacred. But interestingly, this is a nation that calls itself a Christian nation.
Right.
So if you are a Christian nation, for argument's sake, let me say you are sacred.
Right.
Dr. Neves Mumba then stands a better chance to lead that particular nation. Because it's not just a deacon in the church or one of the new convents in the church. he is a Christian leader on an international level. So he qualified to be in that position. So then they began to use the Old Testament to justify the reason why a Pastor Neves would not be shouldn't be in politics. And one of it is, the office of the prophet or the priest, and then the office of the king, and that kind of separation. And it's interesting that you are trying to separate these offices, but you do not want to separate the state from the church. So they use a non-biblical narrative to confuse the Zambians. So we didn't have social media. So those of us who were defending Dr. Neves Mumba, we are defending him one-on-one on people that you meet.
Right.
So there is no social media where you can say, I'm sending you this clip because Dr. Neves right now is preaching in Gaborone, or he's preaching in Namibia, or he's preaching in South Africa. They couldn't see that. So they were taught, they were fed a narrative, and they believed that narrative. And that is what I found very, very confusing. And allow me to talk about the state and the church itself. I think maybe my pastor, Ruben Sambo, believes in Zambia as a Christian nation. I believe that maybe Dr. Neves Mumba, I not believe, he talks about it. Zambia is a Christian nation. And Chiluba was on the forefront to make sure that Zambia is a Christian nation. Right. I do not believe, Amunsha, that a nation can be a Christian.
Okay.
I do not believe that.
Right.
There is no basis for that.
Okay.
Now, the commission on this side of Calvary is go into all the nations and make disciples of all people.
Right.
So we go to the nation and we are reaching out, sharing the message of the gospel to the people.
Right.
And these people, when they believe, they confess and they become Christian. These become part of the church, local and church universal, or church invisible.
Right.
Now, when you say that Zambia is a Christian nation, what do you mean? How does that look like? To me, you cannot convert Zambia. You can convert Zambians to become Christian. And on this side of Calvary, salvation is a personal relationship. It's not a national relationship. It's a personal relationship. Now, where do we get this messed up theology of Christian nations? I heard Pastor Agus, Evangelist Agus, is in South Africa, is a white Afrikaner man. He made a controversial statement in South Africa, I think a year or two, when he was calling for the Afrikaner nation to prayer and fasting. And he said the Afrikaners are the only nation, apart from Israel, that have a covenant with God.
Okay.
Now, prayer and fasting for the Afrikaner nation was excluding other races in South Africa. It was not for anyone, no Zulu, no Xhosa, no nobody. It is just the Afrikaner because they have a covenant with God. And here I am sitting in South Africa listening to Agus, and I'm saying to myself, but Zambia also claims that they have a covenant with God. And here is another Christian here in South Africa who believes that there are only two nations that have a covenant with God, and that is Israel and that is South Africa. Now, that is Afrikaner nation. The theology, I call it the theology of the chosen. When they came as Dutch Reformed Church, when they came in here and created that apartheid the system of separate development, they call it separate development, it was based on the theology of Israel as a chosen nation, and they viewed themselves as the Israel. And the Zulu nations, the Xhosa nations, and every other nation in South Africa was a place for them to conquer and drive out because they are the Israel.
Yeah.
And when you talk about apartheid, apartheid was a system that was created in the church, not outside the church. So when you talk about the pain and the torture that Winnie Mandela went through, you must know it is done by a doctrine that was concocted in a church. Never, forgive me, Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison. It is the church doctrine that sent that kind of policy into government. And so it's a nation that calls itself a Christian nation, a covenanted nation with God, and we saw so much pain and suffering among Black South Africans in South Africa. Now, when I talk about the theology of the chosen, I say that in every place, in every country, that says, look, we are a Christian nation, you are going to observe in that country that there will be a lot of political intolerance. There will be, political killings and murders. And most of the leaders, I'm still looking at the Malawian leader because he comes so strong and is against corruption, and we are just watching and seeing where it's going. But most leaders who claim to be Christians are undemocratic. They are not tolerant. My view is that God used Israel in the Old Testament because there were three things. It was about the land, the promised land. It was the land, it was about God's people in God's land under God's rule. So when Israel is moving to possess the land, they are fulfilling that covenant or that promise that God gave them about a physical place, a land. On this side of Calvary, that is in the New Testament, things are not the same. That's why we have two covenants. There's Old Covenant and there is a New Covenant. In the New Covenant, those of us who were excluded from the covenant of Israel, we who were not a people have now been made a people of God through Jesus Christ. That is in the New Covenant. So in the New Covenant, we, the believers, we do not necessarily look at Israel. So the vehicle that God uses today is the church, not Israel. And that is how you've got to separate the nation of Israel from...
So then what you are saying is the New Testament equivalent of Israel is not a political nation in our time, but rather it is the church.
So you cannot take the church and you take the state. You need to have the church house and the state house separated. The reason is simple. The church gets our marching orders from the Christian text or the Christian scripture. That is, so for me as a Christian leader, where do I draw my authority? I draw my authority from the scripture, from the written word of God.
Right.
This as a constitution.
Right.
That is, the state gets its marching orders from the constitution. So you cannot take the constitution and you take the Bible and you mix them together.
Now, there is a lot of mix in Zambia. Like, I see that this a lot of times where most of our people, they think that the Bible is the source of Zambian law, and they have no problems with that kind of deception. In actual fact, the Bible is not the source of Zambian law. The Bible is not even the source of Zambia's constitutional law. And so,
yes.
and so I agree with that. And it's very difficult to interact with the people who conflate the two. So because you'll be arguing about criminal law, for example, and then they begin arguing, justifying certain actions of the state on the basis of the Bible.
So you find
that's not the case.
Forgive because we are Christians. So if a politician in Zambia steals, that politician will be judged on the basis of the Constitution.
Right.
We cannot just pull that politician on the corner in a church and pray for him and say to the world, now, God will want you to forgive.
Right.
That is not how it works. So the state must carry on with the state work, and they must be working within the confinement of the Constitution. And the church cannot be dictated by politicians. We cannot have a minister of religion telling Grace Ministries, Missions International, and say, Bishop, there is a bishop that is doing wrong there. We have seen ABCD, and we want you to make sure that that guy is kicked out of the pulpit. I don't care what that bishop has done in Grace Ministries. I really don't care if he has even killed a person. But if you are going to speak to the matters of the church as a politician, you do not have authority.
Right.
Scripture is sufficient, not only for issues of our faith, but also for the way that we as a church govern ourselves, propagate ourselves, support ourselves. So there is sufficient scripture that deals with church discipline within ourselves without having someone who is a political figure to give instructions into the church issue.
That's unacceptable.
It's unacceptable. Yes, there are issues like here in South Africa, we are dealing with pastors who are raping, pastors who are doing all kinds of wickedness, fraud and all that kind of thing. I always say there is a distinction between a sin and a crime.
Okay.
Ulubembu, gabanzi katabaelda no ulubembu. They will discipline me within the church. But if I steal from someone, I have committed a crime. So therefore, the state, if they are dealing on another issue. So in South Africa, you have Christians, like you say, who will say, no, pastor na balombo bwelelo ba bishop kanshi uliomwana kashi afiria belela afiria bamuchitire rape. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
This must go to court. The bishop must be convicted, and that is how we get justice. So because we mix these two things, when our church bishops go and mix up with politicians, they eat with politicians, they drink with politicians, there is no free lunch in this world. And especially if you are eating lunch with a politician. If a politician says, let's have coffee, that coffee is not for free. There is a reason why he's calling you there. Daniel, in the Old Testament, recognized that. And they said, we are not going to eat the food, the delicacies that is coming from the king's place. Why? Because they did not want to be tied up with all the wines and all the meat and all the nice things and forget their mission. So when we mix the two, because in Zambia, the state and politics, they are so mixed that you don't even know where they start and end. When you do that, it becomes difficult for a corrupt politician to be called to order by a pastor.
Right.
Na li mipela ko envelope ba shima people ba munsha na li mipela envelope ka 1 million. You can't come and then rebuke me as a politician when I've done wrong. I expect you to protect me, and that is why I give you something. There are no free gifts.
So now obviously you are creating that distinction. Now reconcile for us how that would apply to a person like Dr. Nevas Mumba. So on one hand, you are saying should be a distinction between politicians and the church. On the other hand, it's okay for a Christian to participate in politics. Where are you drawing the line?
Now, when we talk about the church and the state, these two bodies are separate. Okay. They run independently. They get their authority from different texts. But individual Christians, because even though we are pilgrimage, we are still part of this world. Okay. And while we live, we must do the best that we can, use the gifts and the abilities that God has given us to build the nation. So whether it is politics or economics or education or health, whatever it is that God is prompting you to do, you have the freedom to do as a Christian. Now, the problem that we had with Neves Mumba was that people were saying because he was a pastor. And some of them went on to say that because he was such a good and powerful preacher. I keep hearing people to this day say, "Kwenaba linchita disappoint sana ba Mumba mwandi banyale sale ba mumfia sana na maka." You see, right. And the Dr. Neves Mumba first is a Christian. Secondly, is a citizen of Zambia.
Right.
Him as a person, not as Victory Bible Church. Him as an individual. He vows to go into politics. That is his constitutional right to do that. And there is nowhere in the New Testament where the scriptures forbid a pastor from getting into politics. So
right.
My led me to the Lord was a teacher at Mulea Secondary School. There are pastors who are businessmen and women. So the idea that the only profession where you cannot multitask is pastoral ministry, that is not true.
Now, that particular worldview is also very consistent with a particular faith tradition. Look, we have Frank Saliki here, who is New Apostolic, and even New Apostolic preachers are actually taken from the lay people.
Yes.
Right? We have Catholics who are priests, and they are lawyers, and they are doctors, and they are chemists. The Pope himself is a chemist. And so is the issue only to do with Pentecostals and the born-again movement?
You know, it is not the Catholic Church that was saying that Neves is a pastor, therefore he cannot be a Christian. It was the Pentecostals themselves.
Right.
Saying those things.
And that is a wrong theology.
The reason is that we are zealous. We have so much zeal. We run before we can even, crawl. And so we make a lot of mistakes in the process. We become easily influenced and we run with error. And that is the problem, because we as Pentecostals began to teach that it is wrong for a man of God who pusha pulpit. Pulpit. To me, as a theologian, it is nonsense. It is not making sense.
It's nonsense. Yeah.
He's not contradicting himself. He's a Zambian. Does he qualify to enter the space of politics? He qualifies. Can he manage church business and other things? If he can, he can. But I knew from the very word go, he had to relinquish the pastoral role. And he has done that. Even the church that is run by my friend in Victory in Lusaka, he goes there sometimes, but there is a resident pastor that is doing that work because he's concentrating more on this issue. So what I'm saying is that the church and politics must separate. However, individual Christians, and that includes the clergy or the laity or whatever term they use, who desire to go into politics, they must go into politics, and that is fine. If they cannot function in church, then the church must call them and say, you know what, you must choose between the local church and politics. I think that can be done within the local church. Or if the the government says, I think you are spending so much time at church, do away with church or whatever. He can do that as a person. He has the right. So put all our religious things outside. Nevis Mumba, as a citizen of Zambia, regardless of his religious convictions, has a right as a citizen to vow for a political office, even the highest office in the land. Right. Where it becomes wrong.
Yeah. Now,
Musunte Pantu imwe mulibe na Kristu mufire mwavotera ba Nevis Mumba. That is where it is wrong. Where it is wrong, it is for the pastor in Victory Bible Church in Lusaka to stand up and say, this year, now that would be wrong.
Okay.
So the local church consists of the faithful who come from all kinds of political diversion. Right. UPND, MMD, UNIP, and many others who are there. They come to church. The church is a unifying place. It shouldn't separate us. Who I vote for is not something that I must influence others, especially if I'm in the position of power. But however, Amusha, let me say this. However, when it comes to matters of injustice, the church that remains silent in the face of injustice is misrepresenting the justice of God. That is period.
Now, how do you handle the fact that justice sometimes is a contested fact and a matter of interpretation? Is there anywhere where you are going to think that there is no interpretation? For example, the detention of Mubitanawa for 14 days.
Yes.
Some can say, well, he was held because he insulted and he was released after 14 days. No big deal.
He cannot be insulted. People insult leaders everywhere. They are satire. They are cartoons that are created out of these leaders. Our leaders in Zambia must grow up. They must just grow up.
Right.
You cannot be so sensitive on matters of because kuti yaumfwa abasha balaituka.
Right.
But ngabaisa isa pamfumu ilo baisa ichinji kabene munopwe twakunkwila ni mwewa kampanda. They have been insulting him. In fact, in but you must be a bigger person in South Africa. For example, in Parliament, one of the leaders of the opposition, Julius Malema, stood up and he confronted the president about some woman, and he abused this woman, and the woman died because of you, the president, and so on and so forth. We were waiting for the response of the president. When that day came and the president took up the podium in Parliament and he began to speak, the way he neutralized that case, you wouldn't think that the EFF leader said bad things. He said, I cannot speak anything about my wife who is late. She's not here to speak to herself. But he reached out to Malema in such a way that Malema himself had to go to the president and shake hands with the president. You must be a big person. Zuma has cartoons written about him with a shower here and all that kind of thing. You can't be sensitive. The only place where people are so sensitive, it is in Zambia.
Right.
Now, the problem again when we talk about these issues of respect is not only to the head of state. So, inengana tuka ba akainde ichilema nabatuka. na publication yaba PF yalemba ko n'enselishina kide basiteka n'okuseka. It is okay. Elo ba munshanga ba isalanda kofimo pali ba kateka. Then ba munsha is wrong. He has no respect. I think all this thing about let us respect the office is uncultural. It's an African. Let's just say let's respect each other.
Okay.
In other ways, Ngawa Tukaba HA. I expect ba Edgar Lungu to say to their cadres, do not do this. This is not the culture here. We do not promote this kind of thing. The other way around, and you do. So, in the politics of Zambia, there is so much sensitivity. When you go into politics, it's a place of contestation. In if it can chalo. So it's a space where you already know people are going to bring up things. They'll bring skeletons. Lawrence, Nikasayu. Take president.
At Kasai that you take it.
Take him, you know, Kasai Miteka Kale Chilubali. But and there are many, we can't mention them. Because to Adishivana Fwebe, we know our connections where we come from.
What are you saying, Pastor Lawrence? That Muadishivana?
You know, to Adishivana, why is Wada Aba and Wakweswa? Wakweswa. For each other. So I think that there must be respect. But when it comes to matters of injustice, I think for me, Lawrence Musunte, where I get involved is when I see injustice in Zambia. I don't talk about soccer. I don't talk about many other things. In fact, I don't even vote. I've never voted in my life and I will never vote. That's a decision I've made. I love politics.
You never vote. Please, we need to encourage people to vote for Hakainde Hichilema in August.
No, they should do that. But where there is injustice, my blood begins to boil. Now, where are the bishops in our country when Vespa was killed in the room at the university? Where are the bishops when the young boy Frank Mugala coming from school killed with a straw bullet? Where are our Christian leaders? Where are our Christian leaders? Winivan Samaba, Lawrence, Nabashala. People, blood has been shed in Zambia. But west up, we have had gassings in Zambia before Corona came. Where are the bishops? How can something as terrible as gassing the citizens of your nation be forgotten? And the leadership of the church remains quiet. At that point, you are not being political when you stand up and speak against the injustice. We need that. The second thing that I've also observed is that we do not understand democracy well. We do not. We do not understand it very well. Me, as Lawrence Musunte, I have a right as a citizen to picket, to protest. It's my constitutional right. I can demand it. South Africa is known for protest. You don't deliver, they protest. You don't give them what? Who protest? It is a constitutional right. Now, what we say, Mozambique, there is, you cannot talk about peace when people cannot peacefully protest. Zambians are not even that violent when they are protesting. But when they start to protest, without even being violent, they are met with violence from the police state. And those are the issues that the church should be able to engage the government. I say,
but when you say the church should be able to engage, we already know, at least, so we need to come out of that view. Like you, when you say the church, you are actually meaning the Pentes, because the Catholics speak out, UCZ speak out, Seventh Day is apolitical, and so is New Apostolic. So we need to think about it. So where are you directing that to? Right? Are you directing it towards the apolitical Seventh-day Adventists and the apolitical New Apostolic Church, or you are directing it at the Pentas?
So when we talk about the church, we're speaking it in broader terms.
Right.
But there are people in Zambia who have influence within what you can call the church.
Yeah. Yeah, like the current government, really, it's a Pentecostal government. It listens to Pentecostals. Even the Minister of Religious Affairs, her worldview is Pentecostal, you know?
And that is where the problem is.
Yeah.
You cannot take your Pentecostal views into government and use your Pentecostal and charismatic views to judge people. I think that is completely wrong. Yeah. I don't believe that the Minister of Religious Affairs, that office just needs to be closed.
Right.
To be thrown away. Otherwise, just take an education leader and teacher and put him there, because it is actually religious, not Christian.
Right. Okay.
So when you talk about Catholic, they spend so much time in terms of understanding democracies, understanding peace, understanding justice, and stuff like that. So it's very easy for them to engage on that level. But if we're to the we feel things, we sense things. Na mono kutipali sana mulo papa Zambia, na tupepe sana. Kuli satanist umo lefo kuingira mu politics. Tumukane, na chimonefi. And for years, Vamusha, I have lived in Mamba, I've done ministry in Shoma, I've been on the southern end, and I don't have anything that I can say, oh, the Tonga people treated me badly when I was among them. No, not at all. I coexisted with them. But I didn't know HH. Well, I saw that guy. It didn't appeal to me. He was not charismatic, you know. It didn't come out like Dr. Neves Mumba, you know, someone that you can feel. So I was never interested in that guy. But when social media hit, I began to hear too much about HH negative. Ni satanist, ni Freemason, ni satanist, tupepe. I was told I went to preach some place in Copperbelt, and my host pastor told me, Musunte, our president. They told me point blank like that. Now, this is a Christian leader, and I'm shocked. I'm saying, wait a minute, are you telling me that as a Christian you actually support this? No, I'm like, that's
nonsense. That's absolute nonsense.
Any tribe, for any person to aspire to become a president. And because of the things that were negatively said about HH, I began to pay attention. I began to follow him. I began to follow his family. It culminated to him being sent to prison. So when he went to prison for quite a long time, my blood was boiling.
Right.
I thought about the wife, Butinta. I thought about the pain that she's going through, and to carry this, not knowing how the husband is, and the husband, you know, this thing of detention. I don't understand this kind of leadership that is going on in the country. At that time, I began to now pay attention, and I say there is an injustice that is going on against HH. And there are Christians, the Pentecostals, our brothers, they are even prophesying lies about HH.
Yeah.
At that point, I began to know who this person is. And so, you know, I began to know what he's about and stuff like that. As I speak today, if we go back to 2001, I would have given my vote to Neves Mumba. 2021, if I had to carry a vote, I would say, I love you, Dr. Mumba. I think you are a great leader. But I think that if I give you the vote, I'll be splitting the vote.
Right.
I'll put it on HH because there is no other alternative to PF than UPND at this particular time.
Right.
And when I say this, I'm not talking about the fact that I am not even UPND. I'm very controversial myself. I can't even be a part of a political party. They'll kick me because me, I speak my mind. Yeah. So I can't be even in UPND because I'll critique something when I see it in UPND. Right. And I think moving forward, I might be a critique of HH if it forms government moving forward. Because to me, I believe that every Zambian has a right, freedom of speech, freedom of association, even the freedom to protest. There was a year, I think you remember, there was a year when one student, a graduate from UNZA, had a solo one-man protest, about jobs. We are graduates, we don't have jobs.
Right.
And pictures were taken. I tell you, there are people I respect on social media that were pushing for PF to become government, and they are the right intentions, but the way they criticized that guy. There was one relative of Sata, this young lady, who said, why don't you just go and sell tomatoes? And the tomato thing was trending. This is a graduate who went to university. It does not mean that each one of us are wired for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You cannot say every graduate must begin ukulima ba tomato.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. So for me, that time I felt that people were not sympathetic to that guy. I may not even like his cause, but it is his constitutional right. And for me, moving forward, I think that if HH is going to behave the exact way that these guys are behaving, it's not cheap.
Nish, we need deliverance. One of the things. So your background is very similar to mine in several respects, actually, in more respects than I had to admit. And one of the ways is one of the things is we worked for the same church, Grace Ministries. I don't know where our time overlapped or not, but I think just the moment you were leaving Zambia, I was coming back to Zambia and I joined Grace Ministries, and very young, I was 22. So I became a pastor at Highway, which was a very highly politically charged church. And they, but the relationships that we formed are very deep and abiding, and the people we preach to are very good people. But there is definitely a change. I don't know whether it's a change or whether people did not know me. You see, Pastor Lawrence?
Yes. Maybe there's a new generation that didn't know Joseph.
No, but my friends, right? Because I was preaching to younger people. So the younger people were probably in their 10s. My friends, my age mates, I was a pastor. When you are a pastor, you are very respected. Even if you are 22 years old, you are a father and you preach.
Yeah.
And so they then take a certain worldview, the one that you mentioned about how a pastor should be.
Yes.
And when you as a pastor, you say that actually, in addition to pastoring, I'm actually a lawyer or a political agitator, that is unacceptable.
That is unacceptable. And so when you ask me and you say, forgive me when I call you pastor, it is one of the reasons I wrote that on Facebook. I says, I'm not a pastor. I don't even want to be a pastor. And I don't even know what that means, because that's how I play with my words. I don't even know what that means. What I'm pushing is that, I am not going to have a title, prefix pastor, before my name. I'm going to remove it. So that when I interact with people, people must be free to engage me without having to fear that this is a pastor, a man of God. So
Right.
we'll create the platform where we can be able to share ideas. But also, it is about the limitations. Because, there was a time when I wrote genuinely my journey in grace ministries. And that thing just went and was shared and went around. On the back of my mind, I'm not intending to embarrass anybody. On the back of my mind, I am a minister who might be going through the same things that I went through as a young minister. And they may be strengthened and they may be encouraged. But you can see that tension in the room that, oh, Lawrence, don't go there. Don't go there. And then you get people that have not spoken to you in 10 years coming. Oh, Musunte Shani. Up for 10 years. And it just comes straight about the things that I wrote.
Right.
Comment. I said, sometimes get him watch that comment, but criticize, twice comment. You can't just come and hit me back when I've written something. I think it is that thing about the pastor. We are closed up. We must do this. In fact, I'll tell you something. I never had a gene in Zambia.
You never had?
I never had a gene.
Okay, right.
No, I came to Cape Town, and I see people wearing a jean, and I've spent over 20 years on the beach, at Musunte Beach, and I said I can't wear a jean because a man of God in a jean. Oh, go and change. So so the first jean I had, my wife bought it here in Cape Town. She just bought it and gave it to me. It was strange to wear it.
So can I rip the jean tamfuala?
Now I'm Dafuala because now I'm in the church where I don't need to have a tie. So the church is laid back. You are preaching to a church where the guys have come with their surfing boards. After church, they are going into the water, and we were relaxed. Sometimes we're gonna follow up in the church. Lawrence, are you going for a funeral after church or what? I said, oh, you suit here for a long time. I wanted to wear the suit. And there is a place, boxes where they place us. I can also say that it was difficult for a pastor to do business. I know a pastor who said, he was coming to South Africa, called the blanket, the church started to complain. So we limit ourselves. I think that we have tremendous giftings even among pastors and bishops that they can tap into the economy, they can tap into education, they can tap into health, they can deal with all these things. Like myself, I deal with issues of injustice. So when we talk about abusing their members, when a pastor has abused a member, that is a voiceless victim, and I become the voice to that victim.
Right.
It's my passion, but someone else will be a lawyer, someone else will be an entrepreneur, and together we are building the kingdom of God.
All right, and building the kingdom of God and also building our nation.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Pastor Lawrence. Much appreciated that you came to tell your story on TV Bakwetu. We really appreciate that.
I'm honored. I'm humble.
And I hope that we can collaborate further on going forward, because what we envision to do for TV Bakwetu is to become a collection of voices.
Yes.
So we hope that we can work together. Frank Saliki and Andrew Butcher and Herbert Bilika, I would want you to say something about what Lawrence has said, very briefly.
Yes, I think for me it's quite interesting, the whole distinction between church and state. And I think at the moment in Zambia there's so much confusion of there's no differentiation between the state and the church. It's almost like they're treated as one, and there's this notion that God chooses a leader, and you sometimes I sit there and say, God doesn't go to vote for you. You go to vote. There's a distinction. It's the people making the choice. So it's very important to understand at the moment that they're all different entities, and people should stop using religion to justify the actions that are taken.
And perhaps from your faith tradition, Frank Saliki, which is the New Apostolic Church, that we get a little bit more. They need to be speaking out on injustice, because they seldom do, because the church position is apolitical. So, in the New Apostolic Church, Zambia, everywhere around Zambia, New Apostolic Church, Zambia's second largest church, you are quiet. We are fed up.
When people, like I said to you earlier, when people are suffering as a church, we can't look the other way. We can't look their way. When people we just have to think, when people were suffering, the Lord Jesus did not say, "That's not my problem, I'm going to look the other way."
No, that's understandable. That's understandable, Saliki. Don't take it personally. I'm speaking to your colleagues in Zambia. They need to speak out a little bit more. Andrew Butcher.
And I absolutely agree with you as well.
Yes. Yeah, it's quite a very interesting discussion. But however, I've taken note of a few things that I've noted down. One, I've never really agreed with Lawrence's take on Never Spoon. I felt that when he came out openly, when he joined the politics, he never came out and told the people this is what he was doing. It's like it was camouflaged. He never came out and said, "No, I formed a political party." It took Michael Sat to actually say, "No, this is actually a political party, which is this man. It's registered as a political party. It's not a pressure group. It's not anything like that." That's the first point. Then the other one, I feel the church should be more involved in whatever is happening in the country, because the level things are in Zambia are not pleasing. You find that the church are quiet. When people's rights are trampled upon, the church doesn't come out to condemn all this. They are quiet. It's like they are more compromised. There's a lot of confusion. The Catholic Church tries at least to speak, but these big Pentecostal churches that we have around Zambia are literally doing nothing. People are suffering. They can't even say, "Wait, that no, these people, what you are doing as a government is wrong." The church should be more involved in the daily things that are happening in the nation. The level at which this country has reached, I don't know where we're going. It's really sad.
Thank you.
Closing down of this ministry, I think, this is recommendable. That ministry should be closed down because it doesn't serve anybody's interest. Whose interest are they serving?
Right.
Yeah, so those are some of the things.
Thank you, Andrew. Herbert?
All right. Okay, greetings, everyone. It's good to see everyone on the screen. Quite an interesting topic for tonight. Talking about politics and governance. I think we should, there is need to separate the two. Because if Zambia indeed was a Christian nation, I believe if, say for instance, we call ourselves as a Christian nation. So we should be in a space whereby if God is looking down, he should be seeing a church with Zambia in it. But we are in a state whereby if God is looking down, he's seeing Zambia with a church in it. So now you get to find that the church, the voice of the church has been suppressed. Just like Mr. Lawrence put it to say, you know, as a clergy, you cannot have a voice against the politicians when they are the ones that are feeding you. You cannot insult the hand or the finger that feeds you. So now you get to find that majority of the clergy, we might not mention names here. We've heard they go to state house. I don't know what they go there to do and all that. So if they could be an organization from the church body that could awaken and arise above politics, and that cannot bend over to the brown envelopes that they are given, I think the church can literally start having a voice. And the other thing is, the church doesn't have a voice today because the church is poor. When we get back to the Bible, there's a wise man who saved a city, but after 3 days, he was forgotten. And the reason why he was forgotten, it's because he was poor. So when you're poor, you cannot have a voice. So now you get to find that the church is in its position today because majority of the people in church are poor. So if you're poor, the one that has the money will have the upper hand. So we should get to a point where the church awakens financially, the church awakens spiritually, and the church awakens morally. That way we are going to have a voice above politics.
All right. Okay, thank you. Pastor Lawrence, please. We have Andrew, we have Frank, we have Herbert. They've given their feedback. Briefly, how do you respond?
Yeah, I think, Herbert is talking about the church needs to be empowered. I don't know how.
Herbert, you need to mute your phone. Let me mute you.
I don't know if we can talk about the church being rich or the Christians themselves being rich, and that they will have a voice. You know, I always have a picture of this man called John the Baptist who would spend most of his time in the wilderness, eating grasshoppers and honey, and come out and speak boldly to the people. We have reached a place where the very riches that we want to have in the church is the cause of the problems in Pentecostal and charismatic churches. I think we were doing well before Zambia was confused with the prosperity gospel.
Okay.
When the prosperity gospel came into the country, that is when everything was messed up. Right. So Christians then began. As I speak to you, even among us as clergy, you must first of all weigh. Munshanga na muchita invite muchechi andi mu Cape Town. Na kwata capacity ya kunchita invite na ene ku chechi ya Calgary ku Canada. Ngaisa kuno na mupera 100,000 rand. Kuti aisa iweshanga na mutanda. And those are the cliques that are forming within the churches. So people are not just saying, Lawrence, you've got a powerful gift. I want you to come and speak in our church. No, they are looking for names, and we are all grouping ourselves around money. Right. I think that the church itself as a body, not as individuals, but as a body, it talks about the voice in terms of morality. The problem we don't have a voice is because we have lost our morality. We don't have a voice. Right. I feel ashamed as a minister of the gospel to categorically condemn homosexuality when my pastor is sleeping with teenagers. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for me to condemn prostitution out there as a minister. And while there is so much infidelities within pastors, I'm not talking big, small people, pastors themselves.
All right. On that note,
morality. Sorry, when we are morally right, because the bishop is supposed to be above reproach. That's what the Bible says. When we are above reproach, then we have the moral right to speak to the government and say, "Bupompwe muleke mulibaka mwalala." You can't say that if you are crooking people using a prosperity gospel hook to make money. You don't have the right to speak to the government.
Thank you very much for having joined us today. This has been TV Bakwetu, and we had a discussion here with Pastor Lawrence Musunte, a person who has tremendous experience as a Christian leader, as a theologian, and has several opinions about a lot of these issues. So thank you very much for joining us. And the good thing with these recordings is that you can always go back and we can always continue our conversations anytime. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Herbert. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Lawrence, for having joined us tonight. Every good thing must unfortunately come to an end. I wish that we could continue indefinitely, just having a great time, but we've got to end here. All the best, my friend, and let's keep talking. We want you back sometime. I don't know yet how it's going to be, but let's figure something out, because you've got something special that the world needs. Thank you very much. If you are able to send stars, please do so. God bless you, and God bless our country. Good night.